Hello, I'm International Master Andrew Martin, and welcome to this 10 Easy Ways to Improve series. Whatever your level, you're going to find tips here that are going to make you a much stronger chess player. I remember when I was first starting out in chess as a kid, I just learned the basic moves and a few simple strategical ideas. Then I wanted to go further. But unfortunately, my father who taught me wasn't a really strong player. So I had to gain my information from reading books and by simply playing the game. I used to play with my friends at school, and this helped me to get better. But what I really could have done with was help from a coach to tell me what best to focus on. There's an enormous range of things you can do in chess and look at. Chess is a almost unfathomable sea of possibilities. So, it would have helped me just to be able to focus on the basics and the most important things I needed to know to reach the next level. And that really is the purpose of this series of DVDs. I'm going to use my 3 decades of coaching experience to help you to get better, to teach you what to focus on to get to the next level in chess. And this is the first of 3 DVDs concentrating on improvers. These are people who have, like me at that time, just learned the rules and know a few simple ideas about chess. Now we want to know what we're doing wrong, what we need to focus on, how to improve. Well, I've chosen 10 concepts at each level, which I think if you concentrate on, you will certainly achieve better results as a player. You'll feel your enjoyment of the game increasing, you'll get better. And the first of these concepts is concentration. Now, concentration is something which improvers often find difficult to achieve. Life is very rich, and the older you get, the more pressure you have. But even as a kid, you tend to think about lots of things, even during a game of chess. What you should try and do is focus on the game and the game alone when you're playing it. Set aside everything else from your mind and concentrate on chess. If you do that, your results will immediately start to improve. Now, the whole point of concentration is to avoid mistakes. Improvers' games tend to feature a lot of big mistakes, and that's what we're trying to cut out. If you cut out the big mistakes, you'll cut out a lot of embarrassing losses. Now, I've chosen a game from one of my students who actually lives in Denmark to illustrate what can happen when you lose concentration during the game. This game was played in September 2010. Playing white is a Danish player called Frank Jerning Pettersen, playing black a fellow called Uffe Kallenbach. These two players I would classify in the improvers category. Well, white kicked off with 1d4. Now, for most improvers, the move e4 is probably better to play. But d4 is a very safe move. As you can see, the pawn is protected by the queen, and this gives white's game a rock-like quality. Kids, young players, really should learn how to attack. We're going to come on to that a little bit later on this particular DVD. But older players tend to like the queen's pawn. They like the idea that they're not going to be thrashed in the opening. When you start to study opening theory, you'll see books, very thick books on the shelves containing lots of moves. Well, in between those moves, there are lots of nasty traps and tricks to negotiate. And you'll find the higher you get up the chess ladder that players will try and set these traps against you. Hello, I'm International Master Andrew Martin, and welcome to this 10 Easy Ways to Improve series. Whatever your level, you're going to find tips here that are going to make you a much stronger chess player. Welcome to DVD 2. Now, obviously at this stage, I'm supposing that you've mastered the basics, and now you're moving on and you want to become a better player. So my first tip for you on this second DVD is to always think about your pawn structure. It's my perception that a lot of improving players in chess don't necessarily consider their pawn structure as carefully as they might do. For instance, it's well-charted advice that newcomers to the game should learn how to attack. They should learn how to sacrifice, develop their pieces quickly, get onto the attack, etc., etc. But as you become more sophisticated and you become stronger, you simply can't batter a strong opponent to death. So you've got to use other, more subtle methods to win the game. One way, which is actually quite effective and many grandmasters use, is simply to try and set up a superior pawn structure right at the outset of the game, and to somehow nurture this advantage throughout the game to a win. Let me just try and illustrate what I mean now, as we pick up a game from Monte Carlo in 2007 between two very strong players, Timur Radjabov playing with white, Super Grandmaster, and Peter Leko playing with black. And it's a particularly interesting example of an opening called the Nimzo Indian defence. Some of you might already know this opening. It's a very reliable defence for black, very coherent, very logical. Black gets all the pieces out quickly. He pins the white knight on c3. He threatens to double the pawns on c3, and he's also getting ready to castle. Moreover, black has loads of choices with his pawns in this particular position. All of his pawns, you know, could literally go the third or the fourth rank. So, all things considered, this is a pretty reliable way of playing for black. And in this particular game, Radjabov plays the invitational move and also a very confrontational move, a3, allowing black to double the pawns. Now, I should repeat, pawn structure is incredibly important. So why does Radjabov voluntarily allow Leko to double his pawns at this early stage? He must know that this could be a weakness which might cost him the game in the long run. Well, it's true, if you take all the pieces off in this position, then black probably has a one king and pawn ending, simply because white's got these horrible doubled c-pawns, and he's also got an isolated pawn on a3 to boot. So already black has by far the more superior pawn structure. Well, he's doing it, Radjabov, because he's got two nice bishops. In particular, the bishop on c1, the dark square bishop, is a piece which actually white can't contest. Moreover, white has what we call a mobile pawn centre. If he can somehow get his f-pawn and his e-pawn going early, then he could overwhelm black before black even gets the chance to utilise this advantage of the better pawn structure. There are always trade-offs in a game of chess. You might get the better pawn structure early on, but probably the opponent has got something in return. I think what I'm saying here is that you should be very reluctant to accept a weakness in your pawn structure unless you've got good compensation for it. Please realise that. Hello and welcome to DVD 1. On this DVD I'll be looking at how to play the modern Italian game. That's 1e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and now bishop c4. A move that is as old as the hills, rapid development, eyeing f7 being the order of the day. But white's idea is much more subtle than just a naked attempt to down black with a quick attack on his weakest point at the start. In volume 1 then we're going to be looking at the classical Italian game, which starts with the move bishop c5. I'll also be considering the Hungarian defence, which is a solid but passive way to play for black as well. In volume 2 of the series I'll be looking at the two knights defence. And, well, of course, this is a much more complicated and aggressive way to play with black. There I'm recommending the interesting, to say the least, move knight g5. The two DVDs will hopefully provide something of a contrast for you in terms of a repertoire. Because against the modern Italian game, going back to this particular volume, first of all white plays c3, which seems to feint at playing d4. Black generally counters with knight f6, and now the characteristic move d3, which has become very popular in modern times. This might look like a very quiet move, but actually white's position packs a surprisingly big punch if black even goes slightly wrong. Many grandmasters have used d3 with success. It has appeared in numerous World Championship matches. This move was out of fashion for a long time. In fact, the whole modern Italian game more or less died a death back in the early part of the 20th century, because, you know, it was felt that black just simply had too much freedom in this position, too much choice of what to do. But then many strong grandmasters started to re-evaluate white's chances, and of course the Ruy Lopez was one of the main reasons for the lack of popularity of this opening. And certain positions from the modern Italian game are very similar to the Ruy Lopez, where white just plays in a more restrained fashion with d3 rather than play d4 straight away. Going back one move, we'll also be taking a look at Queen e7, which again I would put in the category of solid but passive moves, although it is played from time to time. It was a favourite with Alexander Alekhine a long time ago, but hasn't been seen much since then. And we'll look at the passive d6. In general, against passive moves, white should change his plan and try to play with d4 as quickly as possible. That's what the move c3 is all about after all. It's just that in the modern Italian game, sometimes white defers this move to a more propitious moment. He doesn't play it straight away. So that's the intro. It's time to look at some games, and I think you'll find yourself picking up this system very quickly as we go through the games. Okay, well now it's time to go straight into the games. My first game comes from the World Under-16 Olympiad, which was played in Turkey in November 2010. It's from the Russia-Turkey match and is an absolutely classic example of what white is trying to achieve when he uses the modern version of the Italian game. It's between Yuri Eliseyev and Igor Koksal. Okay, well white kicked off with e4, black played e5, and now white played bishop c4. This is obviously the bishop's opening, but it can quickly get back into our featured line if black plays knight c6, let's say, white goes knight f3, and black plays bishop c5, reaching the classic position for the Gioco Piano. Now my recommended move order is to continue with the normal move, which is c3. This leaves black wondering whether white's going to play d4 or not in one turn. In order to challenge that, black normally plays knight f6. He sets up counter pressure against the pawn on e4. And now I recommend the move d3. I think this is the best way to get into the Italian game, the best way to get the type of position we want, and restricts black's options. Black castled in this game, white castled too, and now black plays d6. Bishop b3. Alright, well this is a move order I'm sure you will have to get used to if you play.
This is GrandMaster Timur Gareev. Today I'll be running a little experiment and show you guys the best tournament I've ever played, which took place in Las Vegas just a few weeks ago, and then I will go on to compare that to the tournament that I played yesterday and show you guys what you gotta do to succeed and mistakes you want to avoid to get your game to the next level. As we go along, I'll be pointing out interesting concepts that will help you improve your game both positionally and tactically. A lot of times there's tons of psychology involved in making progress, so as a finishing outline I'll be summarizing the concepts that will allow you to get better. A lot of times I'm asked the question of, well, how do you get stronger and how do you become a grandmaster? Well, I'm gonna give you guys certain concepts that will allow you to improve your game one step at a time and develop those essential habits that will eventually allow you to become a grandmaster or reach the goal that you desire in chess. Before we jump into game analysis in this position, let me mention the openings that I used in this tournament. So that was 3 games of Queen's Indian, Peertz, Briar, 2 Grunfeld variation games, Queen's Gambit accepted and Queen's Gambit declined. So most of the games that I played were facing grandmasters, and you guys are gonna see a variety of tactical as well as positional ideas. So before we look at this game right here, let's just see how this arises. I continued with d4 on move 1, d5, c4, challenging the d5 pawn. Grandmaster Gurevich later on in the competition chose e6, defending the pawn on d5. My opponent in this game, David Lucky, chose d takes c. This move wins a pawn and gives up the center. To make sure you guys all get the idea of the center, this is the main center, and we also got this adjacent squares that are bigger center, and we could mention this whole range right here are the squares that are going to be relevant to the central domination. So here, after d takes c, black gives up that central control to a certain extent, and white can certainly expand with e4 in this position. Now, whenever you give up the center, you want to challenge it. Boom, e5 right here, hitting that pawn on d4 and creating some counterplay. I'm getting proactive about the idea of e5, playing knight f3, developing a piece. This is all logical, hitting that pawn on c4. Doesn't make much sense to try to defend it, since a4 followed by b3 breaks the structure. e6, opening up the bishop, and black is ready to create some counterplay right there. So here, before allowing black to come in the game with a Queen's Gambit build up, white chooses to create the play in the center, distracting black, creating momentum right there. So this is not the main line. e4 is more of a novelty type move. Quite a few games have been played there, but it's quite often a surprise. Queen e2 is a possibility. It's a major move actually. b5, bishop b3. The idea of queen e2 is to bring the rook to d1. And here, after knight c3, queen b8, or bishop d6. There's quite a few other moves. Queen d6 is possible too. White.
Hello, I'm International Master and FIDE Senior Trainer Andrew Martin, and welcome to this DVD. At the time of recording, there's a massive tournament going on in Norway, sponsored by Unibet, which features most of the strongest players in the world, plus Simon Agdestein. Now, Agdestein is an incredibly talented GrandMaster, but of course he, being in his mid to late 40s, is not one of the greatest players in the world. In his youth, he was very, very strong, and it's almost as if he's come out of retirement to play in this this massive event. And this brings me to my first tip, because he's doing incredibly well in this tournament. You have to be able to know what your limitations are. Now, Agdestein has clearly set out his stall in this tournament to be modest. He's not trying for too much against his world-class opponents. He's just inviting them to beat him. He's saying, well, look, I'm going to set up a solid position. Now you crack me open. It's not as if we're talking about a weak player here versus a strong player. When you get that scenario, the weak player has got to try everything within his power to complicate, to make things difficult for the stronger player. Agdestein is very, very strong. It's just that we're talking about, like the number 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8 ranked players in the world. So Agdestein is playing well within his limitations. And that is really my recommendation to you. If you want to make the most of yourself when you've got a busy life, or your life is full up and you don't have much time for chess study, you have to know exactly what your limitations are. You have to find a way which suits you. Now let's take a look at one of Agdestein's games as an illustration.
Hello, my name is Roman Ginjihashvili, and I'm I want to introduce you to a certain way of thinking. On this project, I don't want to show you how to make the best move. What is the best move? That's not the way to learn chess. Very frequently when I give chess lessons, or I lecture, or I analyze game with some lower rated players, frequent question or frequent comment on my analysis is, oh, I would never make this move, I would never find this move, or I would never choose this plan. And whoever says that, they don't realize one thing. Of course, strength in chess means a lot, but also the way of thinking. Now, if your knowledge is for about on the level of 1500 player, you want to maximize your knowledge. If you are 1500 player or 1200 player or 2500 player. So how to maximize this knowledge? You have to realize and organize the way you think. Now, on this series, I want to introduce you to a certain way. I specially selected games I want to analyze. They are games of mine and people I worked with. So, for instance, I don't want to analyze games of Botvinnik or games of Capablanca. They are the greatest players maybe in the history, games of Fischer, because those are not the people I worked with. People I worked with are Anatoly Karpov, Gata Kamsky. They are all world's top players from at one time or another. And also I worked with Karpov, Kamsky, Korchnoi, and my student Eugene Perlstein, who is as good as any grandmaster also, and myself. So I want to give those games, analyze those games, because then I can explain you how thinking was going, because I thought together with those people, and I know the way their thinking were going there, how they were considering various different plans and variations, and how they were coming to certain conclusions. This is going to be very, very helpful, and let's see the way that how can you think this way. Now, if you start thinking the way they do, that does not necessarily mean you will start making the same moves, but you will start think like this, and then that's where your knowledge will kick in. So then you will be getting closer and closer to the grandmaster way of thinking. Let's start with the first example of one of the best positional players maybe in the history of this game, Anatoly Karpov, whom I worked with for considerable amount of time and analyzed a lot. So this is his game against, he played against readers of a wide range of readers, where a lot of masters and grandmasters were involved in some Russian publication newspaper. So e4, this is Alekhine defense, knight f6. I'm not gonna make the emphasis on the opening part, because that's not our incentive. That's not our priority now. Knight d5, d4, d6. This is actually the variation of Alekhine defense that I like to play myself. E takes d, c takes d, knight c3, g6, and one of the popular ways to play is bishop e3, bishop g7, rook c1, castle, pawn b3. Now this is one of the critical positions of Alekhine defense, and one of the popular moves is e5, and the other is knight c6. Knight c6 is the move that was played in this game. d5, knight e5, and bishop e2. This is all theory. In this position, black played f5. I think much better move is e6, but that's we're not going to analyze the theoretical part of the opening. So f5 was moved. Now, based on Karpov's way of thinking, he immediately detects the weak square. Well, that's how we can think. Now, how can you think about this position? Let me look at this position from the point of view of a weaker player, or not so much a weaker player, but a player that sees only games as a threat, that he thinks that black has a terrible threat of f4 and the white is undeveloped. That's the one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that black has a hole on e6 square, and I think that's the most important point in this position, most important factor in this position. I had this position myself many times, and in my opinion, the best move is knight f3 here, and I've played it many times. Well, move was chosen by Karpov was f4, which also makes a lot of sense, but I don't like as much. I think the both moves make great sense. Well, and Karpov played. The most popular book in the history of chess, I could say, and best known book is the My System by Nimzowitch. My System by Nimzowitch was written about 75 years ago, and those principles of positional play we're still adapting now. We're still adapting, we still respect, because this is based on very strong research, and it's based on good understanding of position, and well, it proved itself as very reliable way of playing chess. However, it was 75 years ago. We still use those principles, but we made some adjustments. I would normally, not me, just any reasonably strong chess player uses those principles. But what they do, they also, they modifying it. And I'm going to show you, since Nimzowitch, how this modifying works and why we have different criteria where we get it. We don't have different criteria, we just are more flexible. We're using his ideas in a more improved version. And these DVDs will explain you, will take you throughout all this evolution of Nimzowicz's ideas. So get comfortable and learn some most important aspects of positional and tactical play. Here is an interesting position from the game Nimzowitch with white and a famous player in the beginning of the century, Vidmar. In this position, Nimzowitch played rook b1, black played rook to e8, which is a very strong move. Because of back rank weakness, white cannot capture the queen because black is going to checkmate them. So, and black got the counterplay and game went on. After the game, Nimzowitch showed, after analysis, that rook e4 would have won. I agree with him 100%, and the variation he shows, after rook e4, if black plays bishop c6, then knight f6 check, g takes f, and king h8, rook h4 wins the game. You see the threat of mate on h7, rook takes h7, and if black captures the knight, White has several different ways to win. Queen takes f6 is probably the easiest, followed by rook g4. That's an easy win. So after knight f6 check, black has to capture. Since king f8 is also weak, knight takes h7, king g8, knight f6 check, and black has a lot of problems. And after g takes f, Nimzowitch does say that rook g4 wins. And after king f8, queen takes f6 with a winning attack. Now, I don't dispute that. I agree with it 100%. But here is the point, very important point I want to make. That's actually, I don't really like the way Nimzowitch just shows the variation and shows the winning move. In order to learn, you have to realize in today's chess we have criteria and certain principles that help us find the winning. We could have included Nimzowicz's chapter about the isolated D pawn in our chapter of the pawn structure. But I want to do it separately, and there is a reason for it. Because when you talk about the pawn structure, you talk about the principles of pawn structure, but isolated pawns, one isolated pawn, D pawn, which means, for example, I'll give you an example: ED, CD, C4, knight F6, knight C3, E6, knight F3, bishop E7, CD, and knight takes D5. So we have an isolated pawn for white on D4 that is needs special attention to talk about. Now, why would white voluntarily get itself the isolated pawn? Isolated pawn on D4 gives white a little more space in the center and gives them a chance of developing an attack on a king side. For example, after castling, knight c6, white castles, and suppose black goes knight f6 back. Well, if black, I have to point that b6 is not a good move because knight takes d5, queen takes d5, and queen c2 may create significant problem for black because threatening bishop takes h7 as well as bishop to e4. Hello, my name is Roman Djindjihashvili. I've been making videos and DVDs for many years already, and I remember at first when my videos at that time were coming out, I was very popular with the video about sharp opening lines, and there was a multiple request for continuing them. I haven't done that. Then repeatedly after I started making DVDs already, that means in recent years, I had multiple requests for making DVDs on very sharp lines because some people enjoy, a lot of people actually enjoy very sharp opening lines. Well, they need ideas and how to play them and to play for traps. I am not a big fan of specifically building game for tricks and traps, but when it's part of the sharp opening, and sometimes it's very important to know these traps, not to fall in them, and to know these traps to catch your opponent in. So that's what we're gonna do. I will recommend some lines that are very sharp, and it's okay to play. You know, once you make an accent on special type of the game you want to get, so you may not get opening advantage, but you will get the sharp positions you have, and majority of the viewers requesting this kind of lines. So they will be from various different openings, from against e4 or d4, with e4 or d4, and that's what we're going to be discussing: how to build these traps, and how to play sharp openings, and how to avoid this trap. Of course, we cannot go through everything, because then we need like 20-hour DVD. That may not be enough either. So I will introduce you to some sharp lines and traps of my preference. So sit tight and watch this DVD. First, let's talk about Alekhine defense. e4, knight f6. e5 is the most common move, probably something you should play. Knight d5. And here, well, most common move in a theory is d4, getting to position with a small advantage for white, but we are not going to go through whole routine of studying Alekhine defense. So I am bringing to your attention very sharp line of Alekhine defense. Once I was analyzing many years ago, it does not necessarily give you advantage, but for those who like very sharp positions and blood boiling continuations, so then c4, knight to b6, and c5, forcing knight back, and now to play knight c3. This opening, this move and this variation may not guarantee you opening advantage, but it guarantees you very sharp position. And here the way it may continue. Well,